So in my last video, I spoke about the top 5 EV companies that you could invest in on eToro. And this video is about the top companies that you could invest in on eToro that are to do with EVs but do not directly manufacture EVs themselves. That is to say, these are companies that will support the EV structure. Therefore, if you believe that EVs are the future, these are companies that you may want to consider investing in because they could potentially be companies that will grow a lot if the demand in EV vehicles grows the way that we're expecting it to. Now, all of these companies that I speak about are available on eToro. Any company that is not available on eToro has been completely ignored from this list. The reason being is that most of you that watch these videos are on eToro, and that's where I trade. The other issue is the fact that often a lot of the other companies that could potentially be on this list are companies that are going public via a SPAC. And the issue with that is, do you really want to be investing in a company that's been forced to list through the back door and not through official routes? For me, that kind of raises some red warning flags, and clearly if there's not on eToro, there's not quite the demand for that stock at this time. So a bit of a red flag, and that's why A, generally speaking, I don't invest in SPACs, and B, generally speaking, why it's only eToro stocks that I talk about on this channel. Remember that this and all content on this channel is not investment advice. If you are investing in a company based purely off of my opinion, then you are an idiot. Okay? Make sure that you do your own research and make sure that you check out conflicting points of view and things that I say are wrong. Because if you're not doing that, you're not doing your full research. Okay? Make sure to do your own research. So the first companies that I'm going to look at are probably the last companies that you would think of investing in when you're looking at a future in electric vehicles, and that is oil companies. So the first company I'm going to look at is BP, because we're talking about a company that has 1,400 electric vehicle charging points in China alone. They've got a total of over 10,000 charging points. They have a solar pipeline in the US and in Europe. They have hydrogen partnerships. They're also working on considerable green energy creation through solar and wind. Not only that, but they also have considerable real estate with all their petrol forecourts, where people obviously currently go park their car to fill up with fuel and buy things in the shops. Now could quite quickly and easily start to have more electric vehicle charging stations being built onto them, which makes them ideal locations for electric charging points. Then we have Shell, who is making considerable investments in green energy. They're not quite clear exactly, but it looks like they may possibly have around 30,000 chargers. Not a lot of details there, but they have New Motion, which provides users access to 180,000 chargers across 35 countries. So we're looking at a company that's going to have a considerable amount of data on electric vehicles, on their usage and what people are doing and where people are going with their electric vehicles. And then when we look at Total, they've acquired Charging Solutions, which operates 2,000 chargers in Germany. They are going to be operating 2,300 chargers in Paris. They have 300 of their own stations across Western Europe. Obviously, they are a power company as well, like all of the others are power companies as well. So they have quite a diverse investment outside of oil. Now, all three of these companies have quite significant dividends, about 4, 5, 6%, depending on the company, depending on the year, which is, generally speaking, really, really good as a long-term sort of don't touch it investment. However, when you then consider the fact that these three companies have dropped about 50% in value over the past couple of years, mainly due to COVID and the crash, but we'll talk about that another time. Then suddenly, obviously, they don't look as much of a good long-term investment. Now, obviously, oil can be used in lots of things outside of vehicles, and just because we move completely into electric vehicles, it doesn't mean that oil usage is going to completely dry up. So, all three of these companies have the potential to continue making a lot of money from oil, as well as to continue making lots of money in all their other ways. Now, obviously, from many different points of view, whether you would want to invest in these companies or not is a completely different matter. Personally, I wouldn't be investing in any of these companies, mainly due to the fact that there's no growth or not enough significant growth in these companies. The fact that the price of oil is likely to stabilise where it is now, possibly drop, in my opinion, doesn't mean that any of these companies are going to suddenly climb back up to their original value a couple of years ago. So, although they could be potentially good investments long term for a slow, potentially safe investment, maybe. But for me, although, like I say, they could be good investments, they're not the kind of investments that I would think about. Then next we have the big car companies, because many of them are working out on trying to develop charging networks as well. So when you look at Daimler, BMW, Ford and VW, they've all kind of clashed together and created Ionity, which has 300 charging stations across Europe. Which sounds okay, apart from the fact that when you look at the fact that Tesla, that's one car company rather than a collection of the biggest manufacturers of vehicles, Tesla has 12,000. So 300 from the top car manufacturers, or 12,000 from little old Tesla that only makes a few cars a year. You can really see why that it's being kind of claimed that these companies aren't putting enough effort into EVs. Now, at the same time, you could quite easily argue that there's not really any need for these companies to invest in the charging infrastructure because everyone else is. There's plenty of charging companies that are building their way out there. Like I said, all of the oil companies, they've got their own networks that they're building. Other ones we'll talk about later. So, to an extent, there's not really a need for them to do it, but they are doing it, and so that's why I've included them here on this list. Again, like I say, for me, it's a miss. I wouldn't invest in them personally, but there we go. So next I want to talk about the manufacturers, and these are a group of companies that are building the infrastructure for the charging networks. So they're not just building the charging networks, but they're building electrical equipment, full stop. So if you're betting on the electrification of many things, i.e. vehicles, like cars, trucks, buses, and along with aircraft and everything else that we can think of, then these are the companies that are probably going to benefit from that. So I'm going to start off with Schneider Electrical, and that's ticker SU.PA. Now, obviously, like I say, this company creates charging stations. They've got a increasing revenue, increasing profits. When you look at this year's sales and this year's revenue and profits, they did take a hit. However, it looks like they also made some good structural changes, because when you look forward, it looks like their profits next year will surpass last year's profits without the sales surpassing last year's profits. So when you look, that means that 2021 revenue will be lower than 2019, but profits will be higher than 2019. So then when you look at 2022, revenue should be higher than 2019, finally, and profits significantly higher than 2019. So, and obviously profits is being the main thing that drives the share price. So definitely looking like a reasonably good growth company in that regard. They also have like a 3.6% dividend or thereabouts depending on the year. So a reasonable slow growth company with plenty of potential. Siemens looks pretty similar in the regard that they seem to have had a big crash with the lockdown at the start of 2020, and they're slowly recovering from that. Now, when you look at the wider picture, they don't seem to have quite the same level of growth as Schneider does. However, they do have a very large range of electrical products. So it is a very diverse company that will cover you across a number of different situations that happens depending on how the future is with electrification. Then we have ABB, or ticker ABBN.ZU. So this is a company based in Switzerland. They're a manufacturer that supply Ionity and EVgo, as well as a number of different other charging stations. So obviously anytime you go to any one of these charging stations companies, this is the company that will have made that charging point. They also make a number of robots for the manufacturing of EV as well as many other things. But when you look at a lot of the EV factories that are making EVs, they will often have ABB machinery working in there. So definitely a strong EV play here with this company. Consistent growth, consistent share price, which is climbing, which obviously is definitely a good thing, pointing to market confidence. No difference there, and the same with dividends, fairly stable there. Next, we have a company called Eaton Corp, or ETN is the ticker on eToro. Again, much like all of the others, this is a electrical manufacturer that makes all sorts of equipment for all types of vehicles. Now this one in particular does seem to focus on all types of vehicles, so they've got a strong push into fuel type vehicles as well as electrical vehicles. So this isn't necessarily as much of a pure EV play. This is probably a little bit more of a lower risk one because of the fact that it seems to be playing both sides and able to win no matter what happens. So definitely a tick in the box in that regard for this company. So the next company I want to talk about is Plug Power Inc. with a ticker PLUG. Now this is an electrical equipment and component company founded in 1997 and is based in New York. Now, this is a company really that seems to be focusing very much on hydrogen fuel cell. And when it comes to exactly how they're moving forward here, the reason that I've kind of separated it out from the other manufacturers is because of the fact that really with their focus on hydrogen and pushing into manufacturing green hydrogen, although it will take them a little while till they get there. The real kind of push for this company and the way that this company will be worth more money is the success of hydrogen. Now, you're probably going to be sat there going, but you've said in all your videos that hydrogen is not the future and companies like Nikola are basically going to go bust. And yes, you are completely right. As far as vehicles go, I do not think that hydrogen is the answer. However, hydrogen as a fuel is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, the main kind of issue with hydrogen and creating green hydrogen is that effectively what we need is very, very cheap electricity cost. So that we can bring down the cost of like creating that hydrogen, because the way that we create green hydrogen is with renewable electricity. So really the requirement for hydrogen to be a viable option is for green energy, green electric to be a very cheap option, Once that happens, that then makes hydrogen a very good storage system for power. So if that happens, and I do believe it will, we could potentially see a lot of benefit coming from hydrogen in the future. Like I say, I don't believe that will be for electric vehicles, but I do believe it will be for other energy systems. Potentially, actually, out of all of these factories, Plug would probably be the one that I would favour. That being said, I'm still not invested in this company because, again, I still don't see the growth potential from this, especially not at the moment. Obviously, hydrogen being a buzzword at the moment with EVs, there's plenty of people that have been investing in hydrogen thinking that it's going to be massive. It will be big, but I don't think anywhere near as big as some of these people do think. So that's my thoughts on Plug. And then that brings us to the final play on eToro. The only other company that I can find that really has anything to do with the infrastructure of EVs is then finally the obvious one being Blink. Now, Blink is the only company that I've spoken here so far about with that I've invested in. It is a very small investment, and in fact, I've already taken all of the original money that I invested into Blink out. So it is now only the profits that are left. It's still invested in Blink because I'm just not sure on the future of the company. And I've done a whole video on that, which you can watch in depth for more information. But mostly it's based around the business model being very good, that I'm actually invested in them rather than the actual charging solution itself. And obviously, being a Tesla bull, Tesla is definitely the company that I see really kind of winning this race and being the dominant power. Out of all of these companies that I've spoken about, like I say, as far as I'm concerned, Tesla is really the best investment for the future of EVs, if that's how you think it's going to go. So really, in my opinion, it's still got to be Tesla. They're the ones that are building out the infrastructure. They're the ones that are building out the manufacturing capability of the batteries, of the charging stations. They are really kind of ramping up manufacturing themselves. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm seeing from what Tesla is doing, they are really kind of building the whole ecosystem to stop other people from negatively impacting their business. So an investment in them, for me, is really an investment in the EV future. So that's where I'm at. Let me know where you are. Make sure to comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.